Okay, so for this question, I'm actually going to explain a quote that I found in my research that it actually feels like it ties together the definition of feminism, and it's actually in her book. She, in her book, Friedman talks about how she actually calls it the coherence of feminism because she feels like it takes into account the people who support feminism, but also the people who may not support it. Maybe they don't support it because they feel like it doesn't cover all issues, or they have different reasons for why they may not support it. And the quote is, she talks about how that feminism is a belief that women and men are inherent of equal worth. Because most societies privilege men as a group, social movements are necessary to achieve equality between women and men, with the understanding that gender always interacts with other social hierarchies. And so in the book, she goes into a description of why she chose certain terms over another. One of the things she talks about how she chose to use equal worth over equality because when we still have the term equality, that it can be read as that men's historical experiences or that the standard is what men do or what, and this is what women should aspire to. And so that by using that term, you actually take away from what would be considered traditional female tasks or roles. And by using the term equal worth, you're showing that, being a man and being a woman, they're both needed. And the roles and the tasks that they play are both needed and they both should be valued. And that what is considered traditionally female tasks or traditional female roles is not less than men's roles. It's not more than men's roles. They're both needed. They should both be done. They're both equal, as in they both have equal worth. And so, and her idea of equal worth also changes this idea that as women, our experiences change. We're not just one role. We're not just one task. We're not just one thing. We change over time, and how a woman's experience includes all areas of her life and not just one area of her life. And then she talks about the term of privilege. She uses the term privilege, and a lot of people, they may take issue with this, but the term of privilege talks about how there's political rights like having the right to vote or having to hold or being able to hold office. Privilege is not just having the right to vote or being able to hold office. It's also personal entitlements like, job, being able to make money, or how in certain cultures or certain countries, they privilege male children over female children. So, they could show it by how they talk about their kids, the roles or the tasks they assign to them, or how in some countries they would even, kill the women children because they wanted more men, and how this term of privilege is also tied to the idea of this double standard because heterosexual males do have the word anatomy is using, and it's anatomy is basically to make choices about your body. So the men can make choices about their body without being questioned, without being challenged, or without having laws written about it. But women do not have the same privilege. Women can be punished for having sex before marriage, or as in, when we talk about abortion, at one time, abortion was only allowed if a man or there had to be a husband or a father to sign off of it because women were considered property. And then even when it was illegal, there were still women who had an abortion either because they did it in back alleys, but there was also still women who were able to have abortions because they had money or because they were upper class. And there's actually been stories of women who talked about, because they were in an upper class at that time and they got pregnant, their parents saw it as shameful, and they either forced these women into institutions because they didn't want to have an abortion or because they didn't want to give up that baby. And then they would either force these women to have an abortion, or they couldn't do abortion. They would force these women to adopt or to send these children out to be adopted. And since these women were considered as property or of a certain age, or the parents were the ones who were able to sign off on it. And so she talks about the term, she wants to use social movements over the term feminism, because she wants to show how feminism it means more than one thing. It means more than one way. That being a feminist is tied to social movements, because being a feminist doesn't mean you have to go march in rights or rally around a political candidate. It can also be the individual actions that we take on our own. It could be the way that we support women, or if a teenager comes up to us and she's pregnant or she's been raped and she needs support. That individual support of us as a person could be our political movement. It could be our social movement of how we help others. It could also be, women who choose they want to take women's studies classes, but they're not out there rallying, or they make artwork or they write about it, but they're not doing the same thing as others. It means more than one thing. And so she talks about, being a feminist, there's more than one way on how you can be a feminist, and it relies to different topics and issues. And as long as the main concern is justice for women, which will also tie to justice for men, because women and men are tied together, which is the next part, where she kind of feels like she uses the term social hierarchy to show how our gender, whether we're male or whether we're female, ties to other issues that may affect us. It ties into class, it ties into race, it ties into sexuality, it ties into culture. It ties to all these issues. One of those, she calls them social hierarchies because it's not just, one is above the other, or male is above female. They're connected. It's the same thing with classes, upper class, middle class, lower class. There's all these connections between people with race, with sexuality, and culture. And so, yes, there's, this issue that in some cultures, men are favored more than women, but that for some cultures, or even some countries, the way they're socially run, women that are considered the elite or considered the upper class, or let's say they even have citizenship, may actually be over not just other women, but also over other men if they're from a lower class. And that shows that in these cultures or these societies, those women have greater privileges and more opportunities than those men because of their class level, or because what those men do. And so it's how all of this intersects and how it's all connected that, when we're a feminist, we have to think of, if what we're doing, is this only serving privileged women, or does it serve all women in all classes? Because these things also relate to all human beings of all classes. So it relates to both men and women. Because if we only fight for the rights of the upper class, or the ones that are privileged, then we're actually reinforcing the social inequalities that the lower classes may face. So for my research question, I want you to, for my research question, for the question of this survey, I want you to look at this quote, and I want to know, what do you think? What do you think this says about feminism as a whole? What do you think, what do you, do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? Why do you agree with it? Why don't you agree with it? Just tell me what you think about what I said in this video. Thank you.